Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Cryptids and Monsters of the Week video. Well, for this random page entry from the cryptids.wikia.com website, it landed on another plant associated within the cryptid world. I have talked about various plants in the past when it comes to cryptids. In fact, I love doing so because there's a great deal of fascinating info associated with them, not just with some of the crazy traits that are tied to them, but also some of them actually being alive. And those are some of the ones that I particularly have a fondness for. In fact, one of my favorite past videos was Hungry Grass, which I did a couple of years back. I'll include the link for it below if you haven't had a chance to see it, but it remains one of my more popular videos as well. But this entry has to do with a more docile plant. Who knows if it's still out there to this day, but apparently it was part of a historical city that even then the city is debated as to whether it existed or not. But it all has to do with this. You're looking at it now. It goes by various names, but I'm going to go ahead and mention its more common name here, which is called the Vine of Sodom. So let's go ahead and let's talk about all the fascinating but brief, because unfortunately there's not too much info associated with this plant-like cryptid. So what is this Vine of Sodom? Well, it's apparently a plant that was found there in Sodom when the city of Sodom was around. Now, I'm not going to go into the full details as far as what things are true in the Bible and what are not, because in order to believe the idea that there was a city called Sodom, you have to essentially go into the belief that a lot of things in the Bible are true as well, including the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. So I'm not going to go into that specifically here. Instead, I'm just going to go with the basis that at least those people that apparently saw this plant in that city, this is essentially the physical characteristics of what it was. And in fact, the person that I found this was a gentleman by the name of Josephus, who is a historian who lived around maybe 30 to 100 AD. It gives you an idea essentially of how long this plant had been around at that time, because it's been centuries back. And that's, of course, if you consider the existence of the city of Sodom, then even way back when, before that time period too. But yes, Josephus is the one that saw this plant, and he saw it growing there. I don't know if it was in multitudes or if it was just a small amount of location, but still he saw it there, and this is how he's described it. In fact, he said it was almost like a fruit that had a color as if it was to be eaten, but anytime you saw this fruit and you plucked it from its base, it would essentially dissolve and turn into smoke and ashes. And it's almost like when I was reading this information, it almost made me think like it was almost like a fool's fruit, because it makes it seem like here was something that was just absolutely perfect and ripe to just grab and eat. You would think that it would be more on the lines of like an apple or a pear or something else that was just ready to reach and then just grab. But no, whenever you did so, this thing would apparently just turn into smoke, dissolve, and then turn into ashes. On top of that, apparently this thing would have other characteristics that were bad as well. It would explode when other cases, like people would touch this fruit, it would explode in their hand. I don't know if it caused specific damage, but I would imagine that it would be at least something that would cause people to jump back. And then also, this was a fruit that if you did happen to eat it, if you did have a chance to do so, it was considered toxic. So all these particular traits, all these characteristics definitely make it something that was built to never be touched and never be eaten. So why people, I guess, would still try that, who knows? But it was very successful when it came into its line of defenses. We've seen that in some other real world examples when it comes to some other plants out there that have these very unique poisons or other items that are physical characteristics like thorns and other items that make it very, very hard to be eaten, and in that way they can continue their own life cycle. Now, as far as where this thing was located, again, it was towards, the way Josephus mentioned it, it was growing near the city of Sodom. And again, if you go by the idea of the Bible and then what happened to Sodom and Gomorrah afterward with regards to its destruction, there's this theory that afterward it was in turn stopped. Like it was the destruction of those cities intentionally caused the destruction of this plant, which is why we don't see any versions of it today. I don't know, again, how far in truth that is, but at least that leads some kind of credible reasoning why we don't necessarily see it to this very day Again, all tied to the fact if you believe what's listed within certain parts of the Bible. Now, there are, interestingly enough, various plants today that have some kind of claim to this vine of Sodom, and I'll mention some of them here. One of them is known as the Cryptid procera, which you're looking at a picture of here. In fact, it's called the apple of Sodom, or in other cases also the vine of Sodom, but it goes by one other name too, also known as the calotropes. And you're looking at, again, at a picture of it here. This is more actually of a flowering plant, and this is considered to be a cousin or some kind of lineage of the vine of Sodom because it too has this unique trait. Apparently, it looks like it's a ready-made fruit, ready to grab and eat, and then just eat all its juicy contents on the inside. But however, when you crack it open, as you'll see here, there's actually a very, very small amount of anything to eat there. Also, it has a very, very bitter flesh on the outside, and it's very thick in order to cut it open. And so all the reward that you get getting past that bitter taste of the outside and then the tough time of opening it up, you get this tiny amount of whatever edible stuff is on the inside, and that's it. So while it's not necessarily exploding in your hand and it's not toxic or it doesn't turn into smoke or ashes, it still leaves a dissatisfied feeling after you go through all that trouble to be able to get what's on the inside. The fact that so little of its contents are on the inside, you kind of make a very loose iteration that yes, it's almost as if it was dissolving away in smoke and ashes because there's nothing left really to eat on the inside. So that's essentially one lineage of this, what people think is the vine of Sodom, and again, it's called the Cryptid procera. Another one is known as the colocynth, which you're looking at here. This is also very similar to it. It's fruit actually that is more eaten, and it has been for a long, long time, but it's more used on the lines of medicine. So the irony is that it may have a very bitter taste. In fact, it's been called as the bitter apple, but it does have some very powerful medicinal, contents to it. In fact, it's been used for stuff related to diabetes and then also cholesterol, fighting high cholesterol, and then trying to make sure that people have lower blood fats or bloody fat associated in their body. So try to control the fat level within their blood. But yes, at least that's another variation of what could be the vine of Sodom. And as to where this thing is now, who knows? This plant-like cryptid, wherever it was, if it truly existed, if it was during the time of Sodom and Gomorrah, wherever it is now, who knows? Maybe nature decided it was just not up to par anymore, as there have been always plant life that have ended up dying and then being replaced by others. But if anybody has any more info, anything else I might have missed, please post those comments below. And again, anything involving stuff from the Bible, it's all based on your own beliefs. I find it just a little bit fascinating, the idea of visiting some of these historical sites that are mentioned within the Bible, but even the idea of where Sodom and where Gomorrah is to this day is heavily debated. So if you're trying to find where the location of this vine of Sodom is, good luck, because you may not have anything to look for, considering the pictures you've been seeing here. If these are truly the remnants of those cities, then as you can see, it's pretty much all just boulders and dust to this day. So in the buried desert such as that, you're going to have a very tough time being able to find even plants surviving in it, and probably the closest you'll get is to those two plants I mentioned earlier. But again, if anyone has anything else that you feel is great to share as far as more information regarding this plant-like cryptid, please post those comments. And again, check out the other one that I've done in the past with regards to the hungry grass. One of my favorite subject matters, the idea that there's a grass out there that's ready to eat people. That's something that I still have not found another version of it to this day. So all right, everyone, thanks again as always. Take care.